welcome to Have Your Say. I'm Ann Minicozzi, president of the Community Breakfast Collaborative, here with our co-host, Diana Robertson, president of the NAACP Mainline Branch. Mainline Television is broadcast in Radnor Township, Lower Merion Township, and Narberth Borough, and is also available on YouTube for everyone in the rest of the world who's tuning in with us today. So thank you for being here. And today we are happy to have our guests, Allegra Cressman, Executive Director of the Interfaith Hospitality Network of the Mainline, and Elizabeth Bertolet, who is the Program Manager of IHN of the Mainline. So we welcome you both today here. And you were here about a year ago, and we talked about the organization. And I'm glad that you're back because we're going to talk about an update, what's happening lately. But if we could start off as we usually do, if you could each introduce yourselves and give us some background information about each of you, and then also talk about the mission of the organization after that.
Sure. Hi, my name is Allegra Cressman. I'm the Executive Director of the Interfaith Hospitality Network of the Mainline. I've been here for about 2.5 years, but I have over 28 years of experience working in housing and homeless and poverty programs throughout Montgomery County and Bucks County.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bertolet. As Ann shared, I am the Program Manager here at IHN Mainline. I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I worked in homelessness and housing, another organization, and I worked in foster care. I have my master's degree in restorative practices and youth counseling.
So we're so thankful to be back and, be able to provide an update. But just as a reminder to the audience, IHN at the Mainline, we are a family shelter, emergency shelter for families. Located, our office is in Norristown, and we use host congregations along the Mainline area. And our mission really is to enable volunteers from local congregations and the broader community to provide compassionate, temporary emergency shelter for homeless families. And our programs and services connect families to resources, empowering them to achieve and maintain affordable housing in a community of their choosing. And we also are doing preventative services and diversion services. So a lot's happening here at the office.
So, in the midst of the pandemic, how have your operations changed?
Yeah, things did change pretty rapidly for us. We immediately moved to having our families stay with us here at the day center in Norristown. Normally, the families are staying in the evening with area congregations along the main line, and then they're with us during the day. But that came to a screeching halt with the pandemic as churches needed to and congregations needed to shut down to create safe space for people. So at that point, we moved to sheltering folks right here overnight in our day center and assisting families with reconnecting with their family and friend support systems. When the state of eviction went into play, that really meant that families could go back to being with their families in a doubled up situation, and that they didn't risk being evicted at that time. Normally, being doubled up creates problems because if you're not on the lease, it's a violation of the lease, and thus you risk eviction. So with that stay of eviction being put into place, we were able to kind of bridge some of the family support that folks could stay with family. That meant, though, that families needed more community-based support. So we kind of moved to providing that support to directly going to households and meeting with folks there instead of just providing the support here at the day center. Going into the homes and doing case management outside on the front step, a little different than what's typical here at the day center. It meant social distancing, 6 feet apart, wearing masks, staying outside in the backyard, or standing on the sidewalk having a conversation. It meant bringing food and gift cards, paper products, diapers, things that have been donated by community members and volunteers to kind of support families that were going through financial crisis, not knowing kind of what was going to happen. It meant FaceTime calls, Zoom conference calls, meant looking for housing in a virtual world, which is a lot more challenging. Have landlords that weren't willing to, turn over their properties, weren't willing to let families in to take a look at available properties, concerned about health issues with new persons coming in. We saw an immediate need for support for the families that had graduated in the past year, that had kind of been through the shelter program and now were in their own houses. Families were concerned because they couldn't get to work. Work was closed, daycares were closed, soup kitchens were shut down. Families didn't have access to internet. You couldn't get through on the phone to apply for TANF, cash assistance programs, or SNAP food assistance programs. And they weren't emotionally prepared to parent without support. Some of the families didn't have access to food pantries. Food pantries had closed, or food pantries weren't in a walkable distance. And when folks don't have transportation, that creates barriers and hardships. Children needed food that normally was provided at school. A lot of children would have, were used to having 2 meals a day provided to them at school. And even though the schools kind of made some changes and had pickup spots available to provide those meals for a lot of the families that we work with, they were unable to get to those locations, either because they didn't have a vehicle, was too far to be able to carry the boxes of food that was provided, didn't have a way to transport themselves or the food. So that meant us creating ways to get food to the families that were struggling. And this led us to begin our graduate self-sufficiency program. So we directly provide that support, taking food and diapers and personal hygiene products that have been donated to these families to us to share with the families, again, by community support, by community members and aggregational volunteers. These donations and supports to families are made to assist them along their journey in their own homes now. Meeting with families to provide sometimes daily encouragement and resources. Families who didn't know where to access certain resources that were needed. A lot of organizations or agencies stopped with an open door policy and stopped having actual in-person office hours, and our families were left trying to figure out where to scramble to get the services.
So there was really a lot of pivoting. I guess before we were talking about a lot of pivoting that you needed to do to be responsive to these families who either need the emergency shelter, which is the usual service, and then one of the things that I think is really heartening is the program to help the families who have quote unquote graduated, and the communication that you do between, not necessarily sharing the private information of the families, but being in touch again with the volunteers and saying that, these families are doing well, but are getting some assistance right now, kind of like a larger, like an extended family, just to know that the families who were helped and stayed at the congregations and got to know the volunteers, and the volunteers got to know them and play with the kids, and to have that communication, to know, hey, the families are staying in touch, they're doing well, they have a few challenges, and those can be addressed now. I think that's really good. I think during this time of the pandemic and hearing how you've been able to respond, I think that it's really heartening. But I also think as a nonprofit, providing usually the emergency shelter for the couple of months until the families get their own place to live, to talk about the prevention, homelessness prevention, and then reaching out to the graduates. I just think that is so resourceful for IHN as a nonprofit to be able to do that. And how much work that is too, because it's all well and good to say pivot, but I mean that's a lot of work to be responsive and then hear from the families what all those needs are, so that you can manage and then manage the volunteers to respond to those needs too. I know I saw one photograph where a couple of volunteers brought a birthday cake because one of the children in one of the families was having a birthday.
Yeah. So it's really, we are very privileged and it just is an amazing collaboration of volunteers. It takes over 13,000 volunteers or 13,000 hours too of volunteers to come and make the program normally work. But, the pandemic has brought out the best in people. I really think amongst our volunteers, people feel like isolated and they want to do something and they want to help in some capacity. And that volunteer is a student, an elementary going into middle school student that learned a new skill during the pandemic and wanted to share it. And what that says, it's even deeper than just a child saying, I want to share this. It's family values that have been taught in her household of the importance of giving back and helping and being community minded and sharing. Like, I have a birthday, kids in shelter have birthdays, so let's all work together. So it's really collaboration and quite a joy to see happen every day. A lot of work that has happened to create new programming and things like that. And I think, as a nonprofit, we should never be stagnant. We should always be looking at what the community needs are and responding to the community needs and being flexible and able to adjust.
Right, Anne, when you say that there was a lot of pivoting and a lot of changes, I think these changes really were due to staff flexibility. They could happen because of staff flexibility and the passion that we have to serve. Also because of the access that was available for grants. Last but not least, our volunteers who have been committed to finding ways to meet the needs of the families through monetary donations, as well as donations of gift cards, diapers, meals, personal products. We've had volunteers that have read stories to children via Zoom, and that's given parents a break, a time to clean up, wind down from the day, get things ready for bath time. We've had children that have sent notes of encouragement, and like we were just talking about, even baking cakes for the other children in the shelter. There are so many ways to get involved in supporting your neighbors that are struggling. As children begin to return to school online, they're going to need educational support. Volunteering to tutor or to work alongside of a child is just one way to supply support to your neighbors during this stay of eviction order. When the stay of eviction order is lifted, families are definitely going to need financial support. Some of this can be provided by grants, but much of it will be needed with community support.
Did you find, I know in certain circumstances, I heard of, there was an increase in like the domestic violence and families needing to maybe separate from where they were. Did you see part of that as reasons for families having needed to seek shelter other than what their home would have been?
Yeah, right now, the domestic violent rates have increased, and we're privileged to have a really great domestic violence organization here in Montgomery County. Every county has one, and they have also pivoted and been very creative in how they are sheltering and providing services to those women and children. We don't necessarily see, we do. A lot of families become homeless because of DV, but there's also been an increase in child abuse. The call line numbers are down because you don't have teachers reporting child abuse. You don't have, those everyday folks that we're seeing kids in school or in a, even in a medical setting on a regular basis now, that happening. So, as we move through this pandemic, we are going to see a lot of different social issues appear and that are going to need addressing in different fashions, in different ways. And so I think you see the community, the safety net community working collectively together to address some of these things and figure out how to work well together. I think the pandemic has really brought us, the nonprofits and different providers together to try to support each other and support the community. As you know, the stay of evictions, it's lifted today. Today is the last day of that. So if evictions and foreclosures can be filed in court and begin those court orders of evictions and stay. And we know in Montgomery County alone, there's over 96,000 renting households. And of those households, there is a severe risk of eviction for 29 to 43% of those folks. They just don't have the income right now because of the pandemic, job loss, or whatever the reason being. They haven't been able to pay rent. 17% of renters in PA have not paid last month's rent. That's a lot of households. So we are sitting and waiting as a community on a tsunami of evictions. And as IHN, as we've all like that word pivot, but as we've grown as an organization and because of some federal grant funding out there, IHN will be one of the organizations in the community responding to evictions and doing rental assistance as, in a couple of weeks, we'll start working on that. And, we're in a position to be able to do that right now. And the funding is there to do that. And our hope is through, our private donors and as different grant opportunities, we can make that program even more robust. But we are one of several nonprofits that will be providing that rental assistance. And there are other statewide programs, too, for rental assistance. So we're a good stop if people need help. We do a lot of information and referral for folks, too, if we can't directly help.
And Allegra, can you talk also about the Montgomery County Your Way Home? Because they would refer families to IHN. Could you just explain how that works?
Yep. IHN is one of the many partners of Your Way Home. It's Montgomery County's one door to anyone in the county having a housing crisis. And we're one of many providers. And so it's a real easy call. If you're having any kind of housing crisis, it's an easy call to 211. And 211 is run through United Way. And 211 answers those calls, does a screening over the phone, and then is able to refer that person directly to the appropriate organization, whether it's somebody that needs shelter or they need rental assistance or utility assistance. 211 will make those referrals. And we all use a database system, which is great. And we can collectively see what's happening as a nonprofit community, as a safety net community.
Okay. And no, go ahead.
Nope. So the other piece of this is IHN is an affiliate of Family Promise, our national organization. And our national Family Promise as a national organization, there's 200 affiliates plus all over the United States. And Family Promise has been working very diligently and quickly and putting in a lot of hard work to give all the affiliates best practices around sheltering during a pandemic, about pivoting to doing those prevention and diversion services, and just general information for us to work with and to help alongside during this time.
Is there, I'm just thinking, with all the stress and changes that are taking place, are there services, I guess, through the county that would help with counseling or therapy or, that type of service for both, I guess, the parents and the children to help to cope with these circumstances?
There absolutely are services. Again, we saw kind of a stop for a little bit and then a restart with some of those services. The hard part is most of those services have gone to an online approach. And so computer access has been important. That's one of the things that we've been able to do with our graduate self-sufficiency program. We've had a grant that we were given, and that through that grant, we were able to provide computers, Chromebooks actually, to all of the families in our graduate self-sufficiency program that didn't have that kind of access. And so that has allowed for the students to be able to access services as well as to be able to continue their educational programming. Even though a lot of the school districts did provide Chromebooks, those Chromebooks had to be turned in at the end of the school year. And so that left families without the ability to connect to services like you're talking about.
I think it'll be important for us to talk about the fundraising event that IHN has coming up. And it's almost September now. And you were talking a little bit about Family Promise, the national organization, but I'm sure you'll talk about Family Promise's relationship with Sesame Street also in light of the fundraiser. So I'll let you describe what's coming.
Yeah, we're really excited. Many nonprofits, we've had to move our in-person event to a virtual setting. So our virtual setting it's called Hope for Homes this year is the name of our virtual event. And you can find more details about the event at hopeforhomes.givesmart.com or hopeforhomes@givesmart.com. So apologize for that. But it's a really exciting event. And what we would have done live in person, we're really trying to pull that into a virtual setting. So we do have a keynote speaker, Rabbi Beth from Beth David. We have an honoree, George from St. David's. I'll give a few words, but because we are an affiliate with Family Promise, and Family Promise has a collaboration with Sesame Street, and they created a book and a character called Lily, who's experienced homelessness. And so it's a great way to create a family event and have children watch an episode of Sesame Street, a short episode of Sesame Street introducing Lily, and having her be viewed by children as a child that's experiencing homelessness, and her outcome with her family is going to be really great. So it is a family-friendly event. It costs $10 to connect, to join us via Zoom. But it's a great event for the whole family. There's lots of fun and exciting silent auction items, such as a signed basketball, Villanova signed basketball by Jay Wright. So we're excited, and we are hoping to raise $50,000, because that $50,000 then turns into our ability to continue helping shelter families, provide rental assistance, and supporting the graduate program. So it's hopeforhomes@givesmart.com. Or you can call the office here and ask anybody here at the office for more information, or at our website at ihncares.org.
And the event's on Sunday, September 13th.
September 13th, starting at 6 o'clock. If you log on a little bit earlier, you'll get to listen to some music by Jazz Sanctuary. So we're very happy that they continue to support us and partner with us during our events, even virtually.
They're a longtime supporter of IHN and very good music. And the other items in the online auction are things like gas for the van and working with the families, the program management. There's just so many different aspects that are going to be a lot of fun. And even the time of the event is nice for families to tune in, don't have to get dressed up. Everybody can just be a part of it for a while. And it'll be an interesting event, and with some exciting news during the event too.
Yeah. We have an exciting announcement. So,
and the online auction opens up early. It opens up on the 4th, so people can take a look at the items early, which is fun. I know that's going to be interesting. And there's also a bit of a challenge between the different congregations who host the families to see who can have the most congregants connect to the event. So that's kind of fun too for the volunteers who help the families during the usual times and in different ways, volunteers pivoting and helping in the new ways as you all are responding to these families, which is really important and good.
Yeah.
So as we're concluding, our time is winding up. If you could just maybe take 30 seconds, each of you, to just kind of just give a wind up as to, once again, repeating the information where folks can sign up for the event. And just how anybody could provide donations if they would like to.
Yep. So the virtual event, Hope for Homes at GiveSmart.com. And anyone that's looking to just generally donate, they can look on our website at ihncares.org or even call here at the office in Norristown. And we're very committed to helping our community rebuild and come back from this.
Okay. Elizabeth?
Thank you so much for having us today and for giving us the opportunity to share how we, together with our community, are working to end homelessness one family at a time.
Great. Well, we were glad we had the opportunity to be able to speak to you and have our listening audience to gain a lot more information that I'm sure some was not aware of, and to consider that we never know what situation any of us might be in ourselves. And so to have this information to provide to others and to consider and to be able to just post it so that folks who do know about you and aware of the services that you offer. And that as we do this, then we all consider and look at how we can also have our say. Thank you.
Yeah.